Welcome to the morebusiness.com podcast. My name's Raj Kara. I'm your host, and I'm joined today by Matt Ryder. He's the CEO of Seventh Level Group, based out of Sydney, Australia. They provide sales training and sales enablement. Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, man. Good to be here.
Yeah, the topic that we're going to talk about today is hiring your first sales rep. It's something that many companies consider. They do. Sometimes they misstep and have to get rid of that rep. So what we're going to talk about is what you can do is to make sure that you got your sales rep hired the right way and that you make them successful, because that makes everybody more money. Let's start by talking about the timing of hiring your first salesperson. How should somebody think through when the timing seems right?
Yeah, I think obviously it depends on the type of business, if you're venture backed or if you're bootstrapping everything, but I think like the way that I look at it is you have to be able to look that person in the eye and say, this is a good move for you and your family. That's always the way that that's always the way that I've gone about it. And whenever I've come in and either fixed the sales team, replaced the sales team, staffed as a sales team for a company, or even taken over the sales in more like an agency capacity, the thing that I've always done is a really in-depth assessment as to not only the efficacy of the product, but also the ecosystem which a salesperson is going to come into. A salesperson is taking a risk in the business, which is why they're usually the highest rewarded of all the people within the business, especially if it's like a commission only role. If it's a salary plus commission, bring them in. You know what I mean? That's really like a risk tolerance level from yourself. However, a lot of businesses want to have a low sort of base compensation or no base compensation, and then all like commission based. And so you have to be able to really look at the ecosystem from a very unemotional standpoint and go, is there enough coming in? Is there a combination of lead sources? Is there enough things to sell, enough people who want to buy it, where right now that person can support a family? And if it's a no, then it's okay, what type of salesperson am I going to get? And what are the compensation methods that I'm going to put in place, understanding the risk of coming on? Because everybody wants an A player, but not many people have a business that would attract an A player.
Yeah. Matt, I really like what you said about making sure the ecosystem is ready, because I've seen people hire a sales rep, but they're internally just not ready. And they don't even know how to get that sales rep to do what they hired them to do. And so as a result, they end up with these false starts and unfortunately have to part ways a little bit sooner than they initially thought they would. Yeah.
And I think one of the sort of pitfalls is to think that you're going to hire someone who's going to make the system for you. And that's just, it's not a reasonable assumption. You know what I mean? It's okay. Like I've had plenty of conversations with our sales training side of the company. We on average 4,000 to 5,000 new clients per month. And we have an ecosystem we have a mailing list of well over 1 million sales reps that's active. And people want us just to recruit all the time. And the answer is always no, because I don't want to get into that game. But also it's a lot of due diligence to do it properly. Yeah. You know what I mean? And then they don't want to pay me to do the due diligence. But like asking someone to come in and create a sales ecosystem for you is asking for someone with a pretty awesome talent or a lot of experience to where they can do that. And that's going to come at a pretty significant price. So you have to make the call whether or not you want to pay the price for someone to come in who really knows what they're doing, and to be able to develop that system and be very transparent. Hey, this is almost like a business development kind of role where you're going to come in and establish the tracks and establish the pathways for clients to come in and then test and make all the emails and make all the processes and all that kind of stuff, and then map it out in CRM. That's a very particular skill set. And usually the best sales reps are not going to have that skill set, just in terms of their selling efficacy, because people who are really good at process are generally not as skilled, and people who are really skilled are generally not as good as process, because they don't have to be. If you can find people who are both, and for me, I was one of those salespeople who was both, but I was a very highly paid sales rep. When I was a sales rep, just by myself doing a sales rep, I was making 7 figures a year. And so when I came in, I would develop my own ecosystem and do all that stuff, but I would demand a very high comp plan. And usually I wouldn't tell anyone what I was doing. I'd just make it myself. And then when I left, it left with me. You know? So,
okay. Well, let's talk about like how you figure out who that person should be. Sometimes there's a thought process where it should be a senior level person that can help you build out a team. And others say, no, you don't want to hire that right away. So when a company thinks, and let's say we're talking to small technology-based companies, could be a SaaS company, could be a managed service provider. What kind of person should be that first sales hire?
I think one of the biggest mistakes that all businesses make is becoming too top heavy too quick. A pyramid has a strong base for a reason. And a lot of businesses are upside down pyramids. like all C-suite and no, it's all thinkers, no doers. And
Right.
so
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think what happens when you do that is that you put people in a position where they ultimately have to fail. Because if you hire a senior person first, like they're not going to do the doing. They're
Right.
gonna build and manage. That's what their skill set is, what their job is. They've already done the doing. They're over it. They're sick of it. They don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
asking them to build it and then do it, it's just gonna it's that's not gonna be the conversation when you bring them on. The conversation is, hey, we're looking for a senior guy to build everything out and do all this kind of stuff. And the guy's gonna go, sweet. And they're gonna go, oh yeah, and you've also got to do your own outbound, your own prospecting, your own closing.
Mm.
This is crap. And so
Yeah.
it just ends up being a bad relationship straight away. I've made that mistake myself, like building out like high level sort of management first, and you just end up with an extraordinarily high operating expense. And then from there, you have a whole lot of thinkers thinking, and unless you have an extremely clear direction, directive, vision, mission, values, and everything's really dialed in from like an executive level, the chances of that not going catastrophically wrong are pretty low. And then you're just gonna have to fire everyone anyway.
Yeah. So what's the right level? Because if you bring on somebody that's too junior, that might also not be the right move for you too. So what's a
Yeah,
good level for the first hire?
yeah. I think you want someone that's gonna wanna be able to do the job, but also grow with the company. So what you're looking for is the person who has done something one level up at a much larger company, or at the same level of a much larger, more established company. You're like obviously you probably heard of the Peter Principle, right?
Mm.
Promote people to a state of incompetence. And so one of the things that I believe in my business is I'm very transparent. I have a few friends of mine that work for me, and he came to me and he said, how do I become the CEO of this business? And I said, chances are you don't. And he was like, what do you mean? Skip, I've been a friend for 20 years. And I said, man, you're learning on the job and you've done a phenomenal job. If I keep you in there, it's just become like an echo chamber of the same thoughts. So you would need to, like, as much as it would pain me, quit, go away for 2 years, become the VP of ops of a much larger company, then come back as the COO of a smaller company. Like that makes sense. That's a genuine progression, right? So if you get
Mhm.
someone who is like looking to either move one level up or move one level across from the position they currently have at a bigger, more established company, I think that's probably the right way to do it. So figure out what the job description is, because no hire is going to be successful without a really clear job description. And we spent a lot of time going over our job descriptions, especially for salespeople. And it's an evolving, shifting matrix that kind of happens over time, depending on the size and scope of the company and that kind of stuff. But I really think that you should go, let's have a look at the job description, the actual doing that is going to be required, and then get someone who's done that at a bigger company and just bring them straight across. Or get someone who's like a junior at a much bigger company and then bring them up to the next level so they get a little bit out of responsibility, but then they get to pull from all the stuff. And then you get the benefit of sort of probably utilizing a lot of the systems that person has been using day to day freshly, like
Mhm.
they've been doing it recently. So that's how I would look at it. Like we're looking for kind of a high level sales manager at the moment, and that's the route that I've taken. And so my final candidates are someone who is from a software company and a point of sale company that are much larger in terms of similar in terms of lead volume, because we generate about 35,000 leads a month. So
Mm.
similar in terms of lead volume, but much larger in terms of reps, because we're looking to build out a larger team. And so I need someone who's already done that. So the days of having someone learn on the job process are a bit over.
Yeah, that's hard for a small company, period, I think, to do because it's a very expensive way to bring someone on board. Let's talk about how you compensate somebody then. So, what are the key elements of a compensation plan when you structure something?
I think I think it's important to understand that you will always get it wrong. So that's one thing that I learned, and it made me feel very good for someone who knew more than me to tell me, "Hey, don't worry, everybody screws this up." Like my mentor was the CEO of Smirnoff, and he was the CMO of Allied Domec and Yamaha, and like a like a very high level
Hmm.
executive.
Yeah.
When I'm putting together comp plans, like I do it with him because he just is a smarter, older guy than me. He's always told me, he's mate, like no company gets this right, and they're always changing. So, and I think that being transparent about that is important. Hey, like I tell my team, hey, this is the bonus structure for the year. It may be awesome, it may be terrible, but this is what we think reasonably will happen at the moment, and it'll probably change and evolve over time because, like, it has to, right? And then the explanation as well, especially when you're bringing on like a new rep, is that there's a sort of, I don't know, like a thought process that if you come into a business early, then you're taking a risk. So your reward should be higher, which is why like brand new companies can steal good reps because they can have like crazy compensation packages. Like we lost a rep to a company that's paying 30% commissions, right? 30% commissions is lunacy,
That's
right?
pretty.
For any established business, like basically the only people who can do that are scams and like people who aren't fulfilling, or they have some sort of business model that just doesn't require, it's just, or they're not doing it's completely self-generated leads from the salesperson's perspective, or there's got to be a catch, right? Because 30% on commissions is insane. Like we don't have a 30% net operating profit. You know what I mean? You're paying your sales reps more than you are tax. That's just it's an odd conundrum. But like it's a brand new company, then that's how they entice people. But they're going to have the conversation of that can't stick around, because as you build out your fulfillment, or you build out your OpEx, or you build out your finance team, or you build out executives or whatever, as your business gets bigger and more established and it becomes a better business, that kind of money is no longer available because it'll just bankrupt or stifle the company to where it can't grow, right? Having that understanding, if you are bringing people on onto a higher comp plan, having that conversation early of, hey, let's ride the wave. You're going to get paid a lot more money, but this isn't sustainable like forever. So don't think it is. And that's an important thing. But the way that I do it is, first of all, I guess figure out like how you're going to employ them. Are you going to do W-2 or 1099? Right? That's an important distinction, and it's going to change what you can get that person to do.
Yeah.
Like quotas are harder to enforce on a 1099, whereas they're easier to enforce for W-2. But if it's a W-2, you're going to be expected to do certain things, right? Like we have, like the way that we make our company attractive is by having a really good healthcare plan. Like that involves the family. So we have all the things.
All the benefits that you need to have.
Yeah, exactly. So we have all that, which is unusual for our space. And then from there, we provide lots of training, right? So that's an important thing as well. Now we're a sales training company. So I think it is important. I think it goes a long way for reps when they know that there's an established training regime. Right?
I think that's a really key point. I just want to hone in on that because I've seen a lot of companies make these hires and the salesperson comes in and there's the phone and there's your t-shirt, go get them. Unfortunately, that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, like you have to provide sales and persuasion training. Like product knowledge is not sales training. The amount of companies that we'll go into and be like, so how do you train your reps? Well, we do this and this. No. Besides product knowledge and company history, what do you do? And they'll just sit there with their mouths open. They just go, this is a skill-based job. It'd be like having a basketball team and then having no plan, having no shooting coach. It's like, how do you expect your guys to stay good, to be the best they can be if you're not providing the coach? And I'm sorry, Mr. Business Owner, you're not the guy. You're not the guy, you're not the girl to provide that because you're not good enough. And you may have had a good result, right? But they can't sell it like you can, right? It just doesn't exist. The way that a founder can sell is not the way that a sales guy can sell. They're different authorities. And so it doesn't work like that. So you have to have a system in place or have some sort of, giving them a budget or something where they can go out and buy some sales training or get better or provide something for them. I think that's really important. And then from there, once you've decided that, then you can go, is it going to be base plus commission or like commission only? I do commission only for our like closing, like our sales guys. And they're on a staggered tiered system on 11, 12, or 13% of the cash value of the sale. Now that if they do it over 5 payments, they get paid for every payment, if that makes sense. But if it's minus fees. That's one thing that I think a lot of companies don't do, which I think they should, is that they should take the fees out, especially if someone's doing financing or something like that, right? There's an external financer, or if there's like credit card processing fees of 3%. Some smaller companies are getting hit with quite high processing fees because they're like a high risk. So if you're getting hit with 4% processing fee and you're not minusing that and you're paying commissions out on money you never received, then it's a difficult thing. And that then incentivizes the behaviors that you want, which is wires or something like that. You know what I mean? So I try and sit down and create a comp plan that has a pathway forward. You can have an OTE of at least $250,000 a year. If they can't make 250, you'll never hold anyone. And then from there, try and create something that promotes the behaviors that you want. Right? If you want a low cost of acquisition, then what you want is referrals, upsells, and cross sells. Right? And so what you want to do is create a comp plan that incentivizes those. If they get 12% on average, give them 17% on a referral. And then from there, like your bonuses, right? Like let's say you do a quarterly bonus, which is what we do. They only hit it about half the time, but the numbers are very clear, right? They're not easy to hit. They require like a team effort and also like an individual effort. I'll just move out the way real quick. So we do, so that's how we do it. So we do a tiered system based on like production for the month. So they can go up the tiers. And then from there, we do a quarterly bonus, which is based on numbers essentially. And then we do higher commissions for behaviors that we want.
Now, doing a commission only and getting an OTE of 250, that's a lot of selling. And I've heard a lot of comp plans actually have some sort of base or draw component built into it. Is that something you include too, or is it strictly out of the gate?
That's really common, right? Because again, the ticket price isn't usually very high. You know what I mean? So it's like really that's a game of building a book of business. So in our business, it's not really like that. We don't really have a book of business. Does that make sense? Because it's a lot of like business to consumer. We do have a B2B side, but it's not something that we've massively focused on. So a lot of our stuff has been around the sort of more business to consumer. But we have put draws in place, right? So if we're like recruiting someone who is a bit older with a family, then what I'll do is for the first like 90 days or 4 months, I'll put in like a $7K a month draw, right? And so that allows the person to establish themselves. And I think to pretend that you're going to have the exact same comp plan for everyone is not the truth. Have a look at an MBA team. That's how sales works, right? Special people get treated specially. It's just the way it is.
Yeah. So you mentioned something interesting, which was always have some sort of training program in place. And if you're hiring your first rep and you're the business owner, the founder, chances are you won't be able to do that training for that person. You might be able to come up with standard operating procedures on what they're supposed to do, product knowledge, things like that. But in terms of that ongoing coaching, how to improve the conversations, how to get faster buy-in, things like that requires some outside training. So could you talk to that for a minute about how a small business who doesn't have an in-house training program could actually get their reps ramped up, trained to really succeed?
Yeah, for sure. There's no lack of sales training out there, right? Like we provide it, but I'll keep this podcast relatively agnostic in terms of like we provide sales training at 7th level. I think it's important that there is a pathway for the person to learn things about objection handling and things about like tonality, right? Just for an example, there are some really, you really control a conversation with how you say things. And so if I go, Raj, why is that important to you now though? Okay. And but if I go, okay, but Raj, but why is that important to you now though? If I ask those questions, you will answer those exactly how I want you to. The first one you'll answer in terms of time frame. Why is that important to you now though? Right? You're always going to do that because I've cued you to answer it in terms of time frame. So if that would benefit me, I would ask it that way. Now, if I go, why is that important to you now though? Right? You're going to answer in terms of that. So the tangible that we were just speaking of. And so that's how good sales reps always make it sound easy. That's why Steph Curry, when he shoots a 3, it looks effortless for him. He's just better than you are. Like that's the key, right? He's trained and practiced and better. And so when you hear really good salespeople sell, it's always, oh, that person's just a lay down sales. No, they're just doing things that you don't understand because communication is an art form. And so if you understand the art and the science components of it, then you can control a conversation effortlessly. And it looks like the other person's in control, but they are doing exactly as they are being cued to do. And like the key things that people need to train on is, first of all, having a set structure. Everyone should have a script. It is, I will dare say, incorrect to say otherwise. I'm sure there are, but I have not met a 7-figure earning sales rep who does not use a script. And I know a lot more than most. Scripts are essential to create consistency across process. So when you're looking at optimizing anything in business, the key is eliminating variables. And so what you can't do is have a sales team where everyone says different things. It will make it impossible to figure out what's going right and what's going wrong. It's just on the face of it, it's impossible to figure it out. Then if you had a sales team of 30 people, you'd have to individually problem solve everyone. And that would go back to the marketing and the lead source because they're saying different things along the way. None of the data that you have, right? None of it makes any sense on a group level. Because if one guy just picks up the phone and screams like a Wookiee, and then there's 3 of those guys and 3 guys who are amazing and 3 guys who scream at the guys and 3 guys who are just really way too laid back and passive and afraid to ask questions and all that kind of stuff, then you're not going to get any sort of level of accuracy across that assessment. And so then you have to break it down person by person, which means that you can't make any sweeping changes to marketing. You can't make any process changes. You're just stuck in a paralysis analysis because you're trying to figure out what's working really well over here and not here and here and here and here. So you have to standardize the way that you do things across the board. That's why the military works. I was in the military for a long time. I was in special operations. That's why you're taught everyone does the same thing. The reason is because then you can problem solve really simply and easily. And there's a level of assumption. You have to be able to make accurate assumptions when you're trying to fix things. I know the guys are doing this. And obviously, you want to check it to make sure, but you're like, okay, cool. I've done a spot check. Everyone's doing that thing. That thing is causing this outcome. Why? Do we make a slight tweak to that? Do we tweak that? And that's how you get a really good sales process. And same with marketing, right? You know what I mean? If everybody saw different sales copy because you had some sort of weird thing where everyone could see different sales copy, you'd never know how to change your sales copy. You never know how to fix your marketing. So scripts are
the script, very critical part of everything. Yeah. But I guess there are going to be some nuances with the way the person delivers it, or do you try to standardize the way they deliver the script as well?
Standardize
the pauses, standardize all that.
So the scripts are not written grammatically. Scripts are written, I guess, phonetically might be the right way to say it. There's a word for it, but as spoken. So for me, I even put in stutters. Now I have a very advanced sales team, so our sales scripts are quite advanced. It would look like gibberish to most people. So that's not how we write them for people who are like not being trained every single day, every single week for years. But I'll put in, so why is that important to you now? And then it will be like dot, which like indicates a pause. And then what we'll do is like italics means speak faster. Spacing out the letters means speak slower. Bold means emphasize, right? The ellipses means pause. And then from there, we have a tonal cue at the end, right? Which is like skeptical. So if you want to have a curious tone, you go up at the end of a question. Like, why is that? That's a normal question tone. But if you want to sound more challenging or skeptical, why is that? And you go down at the end. Right. So it's going to invoke a different emotion. And sales is all about how to get the person to feel what you want them to feel. It's just acting. And so that's why, people sound scripted. There's a good actor and a bad actor, right? Like George Clooney doesn't sound scripted. So if you sound scripted, you're just not very good at it. And that's just the reality of people just don't like that. They just don't want to accept it. People are just better than you at this stuff. And so, like I always say, the formula, like Steph Curry, like I love basketball. Steph Curry has a 93% free throw shooting average for his career. I think he's in year 15 of his career, 93%, right? And the formula is there for everyone to do. It's not a secret. At the end of every practice, right? He's been doing this for 15 years. He shoots 100 free throws. He has to make every single one, or he starts again from scratch, right? And then the last 10, none of them are allowed to hit the rim. And if they do, he starts back at 1. And he's been doing that for 15 years. And that sucks. It really does. That would be an extraordinarily annoying and hellacious process. And he's done it for 15 years. And that's why he is the greatest free throw shooter ever. Right?
Yeah. There's something to be said for repetition, practice. You can't get around it, right?
Exactly. It's just automatic. And that's why scripting and having a really good program in place that's very deliberate and understands that selling is just a series of skill sets. No one's born with it. And if you think they are, they're not, right? Some people are naturally better communicators, but those people who are like that are generally not as good as salespeople at the top categories because they're like, they can make $200,000 to $300,000 a year and not have to try that hard. Like they don't have to get really good because like they're just naturally a good like communicator and quite personable. But those people are usually capped, right? You've heard that, like the talent but doesn't have the work. That's most people. And the most arrogant salespeople are the ones that make $250,000 a year. Always. They think they're killing it and they're always the best and all that kind of stuff. And then you come in and tell them that you make 5 times what they do. And usually it's, what are you selling? It's just better. It's no, I'm just better than you. It's just the way it is. You know what I mean? Like like Elon Musk is a far better business operator than I am. It's just how it is.
Yeah.
Like
let's
I'm fine.
Let's go a little bit deeper into what you're talking about, which is how do you attain specific goals for the rep? How do you set up the goals and how do you evaluate performance?
Yeah. So our key indicator is ROI. Again, that's how much money have I put into you versus how much I get back. And for us, it's because we have quite a heavy ad spend. We're a B2C online. We don't have a widget. We don't have a surfboard that we're selling. We haven't done R&D for software. So our product is an online-based sort of training program. Generally speaking, most of our cost of goods goes into advertising. So if I'm paying $200 per booked call, let's just say that, and I book you out 100 booked calls, I've put $20,000 into you. If you return me 100,000, you have a 5 times ROI. If you can't produce me that, I don't want you. My top guy last month was a 15.9.
15.9x ROI?
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, he's my top dude, right? Average was about 7. So that's what I'm looking for. Anyone who below a 3 gets put on performance management. So that's like my main metric. We used to really do like cash collection and contract values and this, but I found that it wasn't really like promoting the activities and the culture that I wanted. Now I'm going to preface this by saying we are still figuring some of this stuff out, because as a business grows and changes, like what you need from a team is just different. And so like the answer, if we were to have an interview in a year's time, the answer will probably be different. The reason being is because as our business grows, last month we had 35,000 leads. That's a lot of people. It's a lot of human beings, right?
And these are all from your advertising, your ad spend generated that much?
Yeah.
A lot of money you're spending on ads too.
We get a lot of organic. We get hundreds of thousands of people on our website every month. We get a lot of traffic. The face of the company is Jeremy Miner. Like he has a huge social profile. Now we built that very intentionally. We built the whole thing over the last 3 years. So it's all kind of a machine that works together, but we're spending hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars a month on advertising. I think we probably spend $6 to $7 million a year on ads, right? Across all different platforms. But again, like when I was just concentrating on cash and contract value, what the guys were doing, you could see the behaviors. And the behaviors were like double booking themselves and doing this to increase that metric, because that's what got them like the monthly. We do every month we do a top producer and they get a watch, they get a Breitling, right? So like they wanted it. So they were adjusting. And then I was like, that's not actually that good for us, because they ended up like becoming very expensive, because the metric was how much cash can you produce, but they were costing us a lot of money to get that. So then I shifted it to ROI. And what that did is it meant that they had to think twice about like where they were like, okay, can I get some things from over here and over here? And so just changing that metric, it changed the way the sales team was acting, and which is really interesting. And then for next year, my plan is to bring in a couple different comp plans that kind of incentivize different behaviors and allow people to choose from a different couple styles of being reps, like more inbound only, and then more like comprehensive rep that does their own outbound, they're on this, they're on this, they're on this. And then like because they're going to be generating a lot of stuff themselves, they get a higher comp plan because they're going to be a much cheaper rep for me. You know what I mean? But they have to do a lot more, right? Playing around with different things. And really the idea for a comp plan or for setting targets for reps is, what behaviors do you want? And again, it's going to shift and change, because the behaviors that I wanted a year ago are not the behaviors that I necessarily want now.
Yeah.
But that's a learning curve, and I don't think that will ever change. But we're in a position where we have a lot of leads. And it's not actually that easy. It sounds like a great problem to have, but it is, but it's actually a very complicated problem, because
you've got to qualify the leads, right? Because not everybody's going to be qualified.
The issue is like turning down ads to get less leads actually ends up screwing up demand curves and stuff like that. So like and the way that our business works is like the money that we spend now doesn't really make us money for 2 to 3 months. And so that's our sales cycle, right? And about 10% of our leads are buyer leads. They bought something. They bought a product. We have a couple of products like $27, $97, stuff like that goes through different sales systems and scripts and all that kind of stuff. And figuring out how to create an effective and cost-effective and like efficient mechanism to get those people in to speak to the right people, because we only want people into our higher ticket services who are actually supposed to be there. You know what I mean? Like people we don't do any biz op stuff. We don't do, hey, learn how to be a sales rep. So no, you have to be like an established salesperson, or there's just no point doing this. And so figuring all that out when you have such a high volume is actually really difficult, because the tendency of a marketing team is just to want to spend more money and get more leads. And then the sales team can get very complacent and lazy, and they can have an ecosystem that just requires that. And that can create issues, because like things can go down at any minute.
Let's talk about the tools that you need to make all of this work. Probably the most basic thing would be a CRM to get started. What are some of the other tools that you find help people become more successful?
I think data is king, right? And there are so many different ways to do it, but I think like end of day reporting is extremely important. End of day, end of week, end of month, and quarterly reports are really important. And you can use an EOD form in Google Forms and then have a link to a sheet. Like it doesn't have to be complicated. But we use click data, and then that just like we use Airtable and click data is like what a lot of our stuff comes from. And then we use Close as our CRM. Close is a great sales CRM. it's not a customer relations manager. That's not what it is. It's a sales platform, right?
Yeah.
It's really simple. It integrates with everything. You know what I mean? And I think that having your CRM built in the correct way and then having the ability to get reporting is really important. I like to over-engineer reporting and then simplify it, because the more data you want. And so if you over-engineer it from the beginning, then you can always bring stuff back because it's like the architecture is there. For example, if I'm have an outbound team or a cold calling team or whatever, then like the pickup rate can be affected. So like you have to know how many dials and how many pick up, right? Because there's a lot of things you can do to make that better. But then a lot of people don't track the pickup to conversation rate. So if 100 people pick up and 50 people have a genuine conversation, that's 50 people who didn't. I need to know why. So I need to know, not a lot of people just track like the pickup rate to the booking rate, whatever it is, right? But that's not actually that helpful, because there's a whole step in between. Because if somebody picks up the phone and then screams like a Wookiee, they're going to have a lot of people tell them to go away. If someone picks up the phone and says things the right way with the right tonality, they're going to have a very high percentage of people want to speak to them. So that's a skill-based metric that I can affect, right? And then from there, from the conversations, then the bookings. So the pickup rate is a process thing that we can fix, right? The conversation rate is a skill thing that we can fix. And then what I want to do is that conversation rate to the booking rate, again, is a skill-based thing. But they're different skills. Like the opener, most people who I come in who do like outbound or cold calling, the only thing they really need to focus on for the first 90 days is just nailing their opener. Because like from a numbers point of view, that's the top of the funnel, right? If you speak to 100 people and you get 20 of them to have a genuine conversation, and then you have a sales process that gets through to 2 to make a sale, it's okay, cool. If we did nothing but get you to speak to 50, then you'd make 5. So now that's one thing that we can change that just brings more people in. And if every other thing stays the same, then we know you'll have a much better outcome. And so that's where like sales training and having data is a lethal combination. Because if you have the data and you have someone who knows how to read it and can provide accurate sales training, then it's like one of the most frustrating things for me is like, hey, I want to get better at sales. Okay, you show me your data. Oh, I don't have any. Then go away. I don't have anything to say to you.
But you can't improve what you're not measuring.
Exactly. And so it's like walking into a gym and saying, I want to get fit or I want to lose weight. It's okay. Go to the toilet, go for a 5-minute walk on a treadmill. Like you're done. You are technically a bit fitter. You go to the toilet, you technically lost a bit of weight. You're done. Congratulations. You know what I mean? We need a like specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, timely goal. And so it's, hey, let's have a look at the data and let's find the low hanging fruit. Like in our sales training, the only sessions that I do are sales maximization sessions. So what we do is I break down sales process and data and teach people how to problem solve their own data, right? So it's, let's have a look at the CRM. Let's figure out all the buckets. Let's have a look at the lead sources. Let's establish the flow charts, the communication, the process, the skills, right? And then from there, let's have a look at the numbers and see what number do we change that has the highest effect. And it's always going to be like, and then you got to counterbalance that with what's easy. So what's easy to fix versus what's tough to fix. A lot of people spend a lot of time learning how to handle objections. And I think that's a phenomenal thing to learn how to do. If you have to speak to 157 people to get 7 of them to actually give you an objection, you might as well focus on the first part and getting more people to the end point, because that's going to be your lowest hanging fruit to getting a better outcome. Then once you start getting more sales through because you've systemized the process and you've gone about it in a way that actually makes sense, then now all of a sudden you can start working on these more nuanced skill sets without the burden of having to produce more and more because you're in a more comfortable spot. Because starving sales reps don't make any money. They're stressed.
Yeah.
Stressed people don't make deals because stressed people like just sound way too thirsty. And it's just not a conducive environment for like good sales.
Matt, what other tips do you have as we close out this segment for people who are looking to hire their first sales rep? We've gone over lots of information. And you've shared some incredibly valuable tips. I think this is a playbook that people can follow. What are some of the things that we haven't covered that people should know before they make that first hire?
I think maybe have someone who's not you come through and have a look at stuff. You don't have to hire them, but a business friend, whatever, right? Someone who has a little bit of a clue, right? That guy who can tell you the truth, right? The guy who you go to make sure your baby's not ugly. You know what I mean? And go, hey man, is this in a good spot? And then go, would you want one of your friends or someone who's close to you to go into a business that'll be the exact same way? So just have that unemotional feedback and go, are we actually ready? figure out, and then from there, do your numbers and figure out what's the most amount you can pay somebody without it being like a huge burden to where you end up harboring a ton of resentment against the person. So don't make the best case scenario end up being the worst case scenario. And then from there, just have a very clear job description. What are the roles, responsibilities, the KPIs, the quotas, the expectations? Who do you report to? Like, how does that all work? And then from there, make sure that the people that you hire have a very clear expectation and fire fast. That's, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you can usually tell, right?
Yeah, between good CEOs or good business owners and bad business owners is how fast they can fire. Because people who have a need to be liked, generally speaking, I don't think do very well in business because they can't have those conversations. And I was guilty of it, I think, in the past. I don't think I would be accused of being guilty of it these days, but if it's not working out, it's not working out. It's not personal. It is what it is. Make sure that you go through the appropriate, performance manage, which means you have to know what you're looking at, know what you're talking about. And then from there, if it's not working, find something new.
The only thing I would add to that list is that don't worry that you may no longer be the highest paid person in the company, that your salesperson actually might be. I think that's a thing that a lot of founders get stuck on because they're like, whoa, wait a minute, I'm making 300 and here's a salesperson. They're killing it. They're making 400, but why are they making 400? And they try to cap them. They try to do something. And that just creates a lot of ill will.
Yeah.
If your salesperson is making a ton of money, it's great because that means you're making a ton of money too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Jeremy, who's my business partner at Seventh, he was the top guy at quite a large company. He was a top guy by country mile. He was making about $3.5 million a year, and more than the CEO, everyone. And they started to put caps on him. And then what they did is they reduced the area of which he was allowed to sell. So he cracked it, went to the competitor, and bankrupted the company because he was so good. Like he was the best salespeople, the person by a country mile out of about 300 salespeople. So what he did is he went to the competitor and then just started calling, and he literally bankrupted a 9-figure company in about a year because they tried to constrict him and because he's that good at sales. So he wasn't doing it maliciously. He was just like, all right, hire yourself for these guys now. You know what I mean? So it's just, and then they offered him a much higher comp plan and he was able to do whatever he wanted. So he just went through and sold everyone. And good salespeople are like very unique and difficult to find. And there are a lot more businesses than there are good salespeople. And so you have to understand that if you have someone who is truly good at what they do and they're a very professional sales rep, they have the leverage, not you. They can go anywhere and be successful. That doesn't mean that you should like fear them or not discipline them, but it means that you need to understand that if you want that person to be successful, they have to have a pathway to make what they all want to earn. Or you're going to get someone in early who's quite good and you're going to have to give up some equity.
That's another thing to do it too. Yeah. Yep. But you got to make sure that everybody's aligned because if you're not aligned, it's no good for anybody.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Matt, how can people reach you if they wanted to connect?
I'm not super good at connecting, but
how can people reach your company? How can they find out more about Seventh Level Group?
They can go to 7thlevelhq.com is our sales training, and then more of our consultancy is called Sales Sniper. So I was a sniper in the military. So salesniper.net. You can find me. I think it's like real Matt Ryder on Instagram. I'm just checking now. Yep, it is real.
Good to know your handle.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not like, I'm the person who likes to kind of stick behind the scenes. I don't really care. I'll help people when I can.
Matt, thank you very much. Very good insights. I think there's loads of information people can take away from this podcast. Thanks for joining me today.
No, it's fun, man. I appreciate it.